All right, so in this video, we're going to go over how to use our fabric kit calculator on the bill of materials. So I've got a bill of material opened up here. We're going to do a block of the month. This is going to be month one. So I've got my product set, and I'm going to go ahead and set my quantity. We're going to do 48 kits. And I'm going to turn on our fabric kit options. And now we can start adding our components. So the first item I'm going to add is, let's do a 1895. We'll do the Riviera, and we're going to mark this column here as a fabric item. And you'll notice that this is in yards. It won't stop you from using products that aren't in yards, but all of the calculations are assumed to be in yards. So I'm going to come in here and give this as our cut reference. It's a little bit cut off because I've got this zoomed in, but it's called cut reference. I come in here, and traditionally I use a reference to the instructions on the pattern. So we can call this color A, as maybe that references the pattern. And for this piece, we'll say that this is an applique piece, and I don't need very much fabric. So we're going to do a 6-inch width of cut. And we're going to go ahead and subcut this into 6 pieces. So that's going to give us a 6x7 square that we can put in our kit. And we only need one of these 6x7 squares per kit. And these last two metrics are just to do some controls on optimizing and your width of fabric usage capabilities for that particular fabric. So it defaults to 15 and 42. If you had maybe a batik and we can squeeze the full 44 out of it, we can update that to 44, and you'll notice that the piece, the finished size calculation, is now a 6x7.3. And you can also change your yardage. So maybe I know that I mean, ideally I love 15, but say most of the time I get my bolts, they actually average 14. So I'm going to only assume that I have a 14-yard bolt when I'm calculating all of my optimizations, which we'll go through at the end here. So that's it for that line item. I can come over and say I want to add a new one. And for here, let's do another 1895. We'll do the ballot pink, turn it on as a fabric item, and we'll say that this is color B. And maybe this one is maybe a binding or something, and I want to do an 18-inch width of cut. And I'm going to give them the full piece. So it's going to be a full width of cut. So I'm just going to set the subcut as 1. And you'll again see that it calculates an 18 by 42. And I only need 1 per kit. And I'm going to leave it at the 14 and the 42 default. Okay, from there, I need a pattern. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to do a pattern. I'm going to grab my awesome pattern here. And we're not going to turn this on because it's not a fabric component. It'll see that we have quantity 1 and our units. So the thing to be careful with is we only need 1 per kit, but we are building 48 kits in this quantity metric. So I need this to be 48 in my per eaches should match my quantity here, or multiples of those depending on how many I need. So I only need 1 pattern. I'm doing 48, so I'm going to put in 48 here. If you were doing a ruler and you needed 2 of them, then I would do my 48 times 2, and that would give me my 2 units per each. So it's a little bit different here on the per each units. Make sure to watch your quantity that you're producing in, okay? If it's easier for you, you technically can come in here and do a quantity of 1 and then make this a single unit. But that's not as helpful when you get to your optimization features. So normally I come in here and do the quantities that I want to build. Just watch that to make sure that your per each units are set correctly. Okay, so from there, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna manually save this, hitting my save button because I don't wanna leave this page. And as soon as I manually save it, you'll see that it comes over here and calculates my quantities. So based on my 48 kits to do of color of my blue fabric, I'm going to need 1.3 yards. Of my pink fabric, I'm going to need 24 yards and 48 patterns. So we can also do some optimization features, where if I come over here, I'm getting a 15-yard bolt and 24 yards is my minimum. So technically I'm going to need 2 bolts. But if you click on these 2 little buttons over here, I can turn on some additional calculation fields. that will help me do some of this math. So the first one is the number of bolts that will be required based on the inputs, the number of kits that I could get per bolt, and the maximum usage per bolt. If I was to cut the entire bolt up, how much would be left over, and or how much of the bolt would I actually consume? Sorry, the bolt loss is how much would be left over. So these last two, typically you don't need both, pick one or the other. I'm going to get ahead and turn all of those on. If you don't already have them on, you can see here where it doesn't always open up. You may have to do a quick page reload to make sure that I can get all of those columns. It's quite a bit of data, so you will have a scroll bar that you're going to have to use. So for our line item here, we've got our blue product, our blue fabric, and our pink fabric. When I scroll all the way over, you can see that of the blue fabric, because I'm only doing a small square of each piece, I'm only going to use 1/10 of a bolt. And I could get 504 kits out of that bolt. And if I was to cut up the whole bolt, I could actually optimize it and get exactly 14 yards out of it, and I'd have 0 bolt loss. If you come down to the next line item, I'm going to need 1.6 bolts. I could get 30 kits per bolt, and my max usage, if I cut everything, would be exactly 15 yards, and I'd have 0 bolt loss. So these last two numbers, like I said, I normally don't do both of them. I normally pick which one you like. My preference typically is bolt loss, because that tells me how much is wasted on the bolt versus how much I would consume of that bolt, because that helps me know if I want to use it on a different project. But the thing that you'll also know is we're using the exact amount on this one, is I'm getting exactly 30 kits out of this bolt. Well, what happens if I end up getting a 14.5 yard bolt? Well, now I'm not going to get the full amount. I'm only going to get my 29. Well, still a round number. I shouldn't have done 14.5. What if I only get a 14 and say maybe 1/3 of a bolt? Well, now you can see that I'm only going to 28 kits per bolt. I'm going to still only need 2 bolts. But I'm going to lose about 1/3 of a yard off the end of that bolt, because it's not quite enough to get me my full 18 inches. And so you can see how playing with these numbers can help you optimize the number of bolts that you will need and what you can do here. So this is also can be really helpful, is maybe I only have 1 bolt of this fabric and I can't get more. Well, now I know that I can only get 28 kits out of this. So you have a couple options at that point. You can come up here and do 28, and just make sure to update your quantity down here to 28 as well. Any of your per eaches will need updated. But these ones are a calculated quantity, so I don't actually have to update those. I just have to come up here and manually save, and it's going to go through and update my final quantities. So now you can see if I've got a 14 1/3 yard bolt based on everything that I'm cutting up, I can get my full 28 kits, and I'll have a little bit left over. So that is all the steps you need to do. That builds your bill of materials. In this case, I'm only going to do the 28 kits because I've only got the 1 bolt. Everything's ready to go. So now you can go ahead and create a manufacturing order with this bill of material.